I don't know how long you've been watching this channel, but I have a really bad track record with predicting NBA trade deadlines. Just in 2023, 2 days before the deadline, I came into this channel and said, hey, a lot of these rumors aren't really it. Don't expect no big name players to be moved. And then Kevin Durant got traded. Just yesterday on my podcast, I say the 2025 trade deadline might be kind of mid. Everybody's worried about second aprons. Everybody's worried about this or worried about that. The only name that might be traded is Jimmy Butler. And literally 2 hours after we finish wrapping up that episode, De'Aaron Fox's name starts to get thrown out there. Shams Charania reports just in the Sacramento Kings are expected to open up trade talk to potentially deal All-Star De'Aaron Fox ahead of February 6th trade deadline, sources tell ESPN. There are plenty of suitors. This is where things get real interesting. But it's believed that Fox has a target destination in mind ahead of the 2026 free agency. Now, this seems like it came out of nowhere. If you really got your ear to the ground, you're around Sacramento Kings Twitter and so on and so forth, things have been kind of brewing in Sacramento quite a bit. You go to before the season started where De'Aaron Fox declined a big old contract extension. And a lot of us thought that, hey, that makes sense. If he makes an All-NBA team, he can make so much more money. This is not an indication of his time in Sacramento. He just wants the bag. I respect that. Take a gamble because you know the base level max contract is going to be there for you, De'Aaron, no matter what. But if you could turn that base level to an extra 15 to 20%, go get your bag. But also, when he was asked about these things, but I want to make sure that we're in that position to be competing at a high level for a long time, not just fighting for a playoff spot. Obviously, the way the West is going, we have to continue to get better as players and as a team and as an organization. And I mean, I'm not saying, or that I am saying, they just beat my ass, but I would love to be here and I want to make sure that we're competing at a high level. Interesting stuff, understandable, right? Put some pressure on the front office to continue to build. This is something that LeBron James has done for the entirety of his career. This is something we saw Giannis do multiple times right before the Jrue Holiday trade and right before the Damian Lillard trade. Hey, I would love to be here, but at the end of the day, I want to win a championship. This is not too out of the realm of normalcy. And things got a little bit weirder and when we started the season where the Sacramento Kings went on a stretch where they weren't very good. We have the possession where De'Aaron Fox fouls Jaden Ivey on a three-point shot. Jaden Ivey hits the free throws, and the Sacramento Kings end up losing that game. And De'Aaron Fox goes to the podium. He said, hey, it don't matter exactly what happened. It's not going to make nobody feel better. And a lot of people took that the wrong way. There then becomes rumblings about what's going on in the locker room. Does De'Aaron Fox / the Sacramento Kings really rock with Mike Brown? Mike Brown gets canned in the midst of losing 5 straight games at home. Doug Christie comes in, and since Doug Christie's come into this locker room and been a head coach, things have been good. They've been a great offense. The defense has been good. So in my mind, all of the speculation, because there was Rich Paul sitting courtside and he wanted to put a little bit of pressure on the Sacramento Kings organization, but because they started to win, I figured that all the De'Aaron Fox buzz was going to die down. It hasn't, and it's louder than ever. Now, when Shams Charania reported this initially, for about 5 minutes, people were speculating, what could this secret team be? And then it literally came out. Everybody knows that he wants to go play for the Spurs, which is so interesting because I remember before the season started, and I wish I remember who reported this, they were saying that there are stars across basketball that are already willing and wanting to play alongside Wemby. I don't know if De'Aaron Fox has had Wemby on his radar all of this time, but for Wemby to be a year 2 player and have a guy like De'Aaron Fox, who was Mr. Clutch a couple years ago, all-star here, there, be like, hey, I'm okay with being a number 2. The Wemby is kind of cool if you're a Wemby fan, but the Spurs is that organization. And that's where things get really tricky. Right? De'Aaron Fox will hit unrestricted free agency in 2026. So though there are plenty of calls, and there was another report that over a dozen teams have called the Sacramento Kings for De'Aaron Fox, that was also reported by Shams Charania, that if you are these opposing teams that are interested in De'Aaron Fox, the question is, how much are you willing to give up if in the back of your mind, you know that De'Aaron Fox wants to go to San Antonio in just a year? Listen, I've been so pro player empowerment. I still do believe that, hey, if you don't like your situation, you should have the opportunity to request a trade. One thing you can't necessarily control is where you get traded to. Now, it does happen all the time, right? Where Kevin Durant said that he wanted to go play for the Suns and he ended up being on the Suns. But that's not always the case. We're also seeing this with Jimmy Butler, who also says he wants to play for the Suns, but it's making it way more difficult for him to get his destination. You can request out, which again, I'm not saying De'Aaron Fox has done that because his wife has come to his defense a lot on Twitter over the last 24 hours saying, hey, we haven't requested a trade. We just kind of letting them know that maybe you should list the offers because we kind of have our mind set on something else. Either way, you can request a trade, but you can't necessarily pick where you want to go all the time. Right? So though you want to go play for the Sacramento or you want to go play for the San Antonio Spurs, RC Buford and the people in charge of there probably are interested. De'Aaron Fox is almost a perfect match for a guy like Victor Wembanyama. I think we can all agree there. But the question is, if you are already thinking about in 2026 and you want to come play for our organization, why should we give up the farm? Why should we trade the Atlanta first-round pick that's going to look better, get well soon, Jalen Johnson? Why should we trade one of our younger players, whether it be Stephon Castle, Devin Vassell, whoever it may be? Why should we trade all this stuff when you already got your eyes set on us? And guess what? If you decide to if you get traded to another team, you say, hey, random team is now a new spot. I know I wanted to play for the Spurs, but now I like this spot. We still do have Wemby. And we do believe that some of the star might become available, right? It's not 1-to-1 because the Carmelo Anthony thing, it happened when Carmelo Anthony was in the end of his contract year. But I remember when the Knicks traded a bunch of stuff for a player that had already told the world that he was going to New York in a couple months. They traded a bunch of stuff for a player that is actively saying that when my contract is up in 3 months, I'm coming to your city. They gave up picks. They gave up talented players like the Rooster and so on and so forth. Again, it's not a 1-to-1 because De'Aaron Fox still has an extra year on top of his contract. But I think a lot of people look back on that trade for Carmelo Anthony, and we all agree that Carmelo Anthony's time, even though it wasn't necessarily the pinnacle of success in New York City, it was a great tenure with the Knicks. You don't take that away, but you also could have had that, plus having some of the younger players that were initiating that trade, plus having some of the draft capital that was a part of that trade. But on the flip side of that, you look at the San Antonio Spurs, which we're about to do. You say, hey, we have Victor Wembanyama. And for the majority of the season, Victor Wembanyama has looked like a top 10 player in basketball. Yeah, it might not be smart for us to trade a bunch of stuff right now for him, even if he says he wants to come here in a few years. But if we add De'Aaron Fox to this lineup, we can see ourselves competing, like really, really being in a playing spot because things ain't going great as of recently. They were the 10th seed a little while ago, and they've fallen all the way down to 12, and they're 2.5 games back. Now, 2.5 games is not the end of the world, especially because we're not even at the All-Star break yet, but you have to think about that, especially when you consider that they have other players' picks, right? You could potentially get this deal done without giving up any of your personal future and using the Atlanta Hawks pick or using some of the players. And it also has been rumored, let me pull it up, also by Shams Charania, they want win-now players and draft capital. So they want to keep this boat afloat and think about what's going on around Sabonis and some of the younger guys while still staying competitive. But since this report has come out, which has been about 24 hours now, I've been thinking about other teams that could be interesting for De'Aaron Fox to go to. Again, knowing that he might not stay around after 2026, which obviously is a crazy carrot to put onto any single trade. But I'm looking across the association, and this is not an indication about De'Aaron Fox. I think we can all agree that De'Aaron Fox is a phenomenal NBA player, but the point guard position is just one of those ones that majority of teams have their guy. And if you don't have that guy, you're not thinking about adding that guy via trade. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of the times, if you don't have that dude, you're usually a tanking team, and maybe you draft yourself a point guard. Maybe, like, it's not like the Washington Wizards, shout out to Jordan Poole and his success so far this season, that they're like, yeah, we'll trade for De'Aaron Fox. No, you might get Dylan Harper in the draft, and that might be a better suitor for what you're trying to do. So when I look across this league right now and try to figure out exactly where he fits, you can look at like the Orlando Magic is an interesting case, right? He doesn't provide exactly what the Orlando Magic need because De'Aaron Fox has always been a streaky three-point shooter. Even this year, he's only shooting like 32% from three. They need production from like outside, but then again, he also could just get himself some buckets. So I don't necessarily love the fit, but it is a team that would be relatively interesting, and they could get things done while giving you some quality, more role players, but some draft picks as well. So that's a case. And then like the Heat, make this a big all-star deal where 7 different teams, Jimmy Butler gets to his spot, De'Aaron Fox gets to Miami. But even that feels so convoluted. Because you got to think about it like this. Not only are you trading for De'Aaron Fox, you're trading for De'Aaron Fox, and then you have to extend him in a little bit. Or hope that he signs that extension. So you're asking for De'Aaron Fox to come into a team like the Miami Heat, where if you're doing this, Jimmy Butler goes here, and you get here. So you got to re-sign De'Aaron Fox on a max contract. Bam Adebayo just got his extension, and Tyler Herro's also on the max. And I think I still look at that team and not think they're a championship team. And they're objectively better, but I'm not looking at them and saying, yep, they're beating the Celtics in 7. Yep, they're beating the Cavs in 7. Yep, they're beating OKC in 7. And if you have 3 max players and you don't feel like you're a real championship contender, is it really worth? The flip side of that is that you can say, hey, maybe we're not the championship contender right now, but have you seen the Kryptonian Kel'el Ware? You watch him progress in 2 years, then maybe he's played his way into all-star level. Now we got 4 potential all-star caliber players. Then we can do it. But I'm only looking at surface level what the roster looks like today. And that's kind of it for the Eastern Conference, bro. Because the Atlanta Hawks, obviously, you got Trae Young. Cade Cunningham and De'Aaron Fox is kind of interesting. I kind of like that idea, but I just don't feel like that makes a ton of sense from Detroit. And then, yeah, the Pacers got their guy. You're not going to put them boys together, Tyrese and De'Aaron Fox. And then the Bucks, obviously not. The Knicks, obviously not. The Celtics, the Cavs, no. And then you get to the tanking teams. There's no reason for the Bulls to call for De'Aaron Fox. They probably will because they're not the brightest organization, but there's no reason for them to make that trade. The 76ers have Maxey and Jeremy McCain coming back from his injury. The Raptors, who the hell knows what's going on with them, but they gave a lot of money to Emmanuel Quickly to be their full-time point guard. The Nets, I guess, could be interesting. They could give you real players right now that can help you compete and can give you some surplus draft capital. But if I'm a Nets fan, I'm like, why are we doing that right now? Especially for a player that we don't know if we're going to be able to resign in 2 years. And then our West is like, no Thunder. The Rockets are interesting, but they're playing such good basketball. It feels stupid to mess up what they got going on by trading Fred VanVleet and, I don't know, Steven Adams and some draft capital in order to get De'Aaron Fox, even though De'Aaron and Ahmed Thompson in the fast break would be kind of crazy, but it doesn't make sense. The Grizzlies don't make sense. The Nuggets don't make sense. The Lakers make sense, but like the Lakers are attached to everybody. They don't have the assets necessary to go get De'Aaron Fox. The Clippers don't make sense. The Timberwolves, the Timberwolves. Oh my goodness. Now, obviously, this will have to be some big three teamer, right? Because I don't think that the Kings are looking at Julius Randle as the guy. But if I'm just strictly talking on fit and need, with Mike Conley playing the way he has and Rob Dillingham being a rookie, De'Aaron Fox is not that bad for the Timberwolves. But again, that's a pipe dream. I don't even know what that looks like. Obviously, the Suns, probably not going to happen. Mavericks, no. Warriors, and he is signed to Under Armour, huh? He is signed to Steph Curry brand. No. Spurs, obviously, Trailblazers. So, like, it's just one of those players that we can all agree is a super, super talented dude, but there's not many fits outside of the one place that he told you he wants to go to. And then I think about the other side of things, as they say that they want win-now players of future draft capital. Win-now players in a trade for De'Aaron Fox, you're not getting an all-star back. Can we agree on that? Like, you probably get a starter, maybe two starter quality players and some role players, so on and so forth. But I look at that roster and I look at their team, and I just, they right now, even with them playing so well, we can all agree with De'Aaron Fox, Sabonis, and Keegan Murray and DeMar DeRozan, there is a hard ceiling on what this team can be. Nobody looks at this team as a team that's going to win the conference. They don't look at this team as a team that's going to win a championship. So if we shift an all-star out in De'Aaron Fox and we bring back win-now players, what is the end goal here? What is our end goal? Is it really truly to stay competitive enough to compete for this play-in spot, or maybe take a 6 seed and go in the first round of the playoffs, give us a good series, but ultimately lose? Like, I think because of this, the whole future of the Sacramento Kings is in jeopardy. And when I say the future, I mean the competitive nature of them right now. Because they still have young players that are intriguing and good, but I'm thinking about them being a team that's competed for a playoff spot without De'Aaron Fox and bringing in just role players and draft capital. A lot of the stuff that we've seen 2 years ago probably dead. And as I continue to read things, whether it be from De'Aaron Fox's family itself or from all the reports from the reporters in Sacramento, I don't know if this is just people trying to save face or there's been this huge miscommunication, because again, the Fox family is saying that they've never formally requested a trade and they don't think that they ever will. But obviously when you have a guy like Rich Paul, who is a guy that puts pressure on the front office, and when Rich Paul says something, in your mind, he's representing the player. And he is just a vessel to what the player is really saying. So though the Fox family said, no, we ain't do that. If your manager is doing it, if your agent is doing this, something has to be there. Unless y'all are so disconnected, somebody should be fired. Because now this is putting on a fire in a franchise that had a gazillion fires over the last 20 years. They just had one 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago with the Mike Brown thing. And now they got another one. I don't know how Kings fans feel, other than seeing a few things after Mike Brown was fired, of Kings fans starting to see the press conferences and see the demeanor that De'Aaron Fox has put on over the last month, and they were starting to turn themselves off from De'Aaron Fox as a player. I don't know what the normal Kings fan believes about De'Aaron or what they want to see the future of this organization be like, but I don't feel great about it. I'll leave it at that.